USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, February 26, 2020. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This episode is sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. Well, it has been a really tight race, kind of a crazy season in Hockey East.
Joining us on this week's USCHO Spotlight, the head coach of the University of Connecticut, one of the hottest teams in Hockey East, and that's Mike Cavanaugh. Cav, team's playing well of late. I look at it 7-1 in your last 8 Hockey East games, and you've now jumped from outside of the playoffs looking in to now in position to maybe even get home ice. You're still actually in the race for the league crown. It's been a good second half, I would say, for your team.
Yeah, it has, Jim. You know, when we we were a little frustrated after that Connecticut tournament because, we lost a tough, hard-fought game against Quinnipiac, and then we lost a game where I thought we played really, really well against Yale. And to the credit of the guys on the team, I kept saying to them, just keep playing this way and things will turn for us. You got to believe that we'll start scoring some goals, and the hockey gods usually reward you if you keep playing the right way. And they stayed with it, and they stayed with how we want to play the game and executing at the right time. And they have been rewarded lately with some nice, well-deserved wins.
2 players at the top of your scoring chart right now that I want to look at, and these are 2 guys who I've seen play obviously a number of times, but neither one of them struck me as the go-to guys, and that's Ben Freeman and Carter Turnbull. Both of them 12 points in their last 10 games. What has changed for them? Is this more effort, or is it just sometimes you need some luck and the pucks happen, pucks are going in the net? What's the positives that you've seen out of both of them?
It's funny. I think one of the strengths of our team is we have pretty good depth up and down our lineup. And, against, New Hampshire, it was the Isakov and Firstov line and Johnny Evans. I mean, they had a 6 or 7 point weekend that weekend, and lately the past 2 weekends, it's been Ben's line that's been scoring. So I just think, they're playing, again, Ben's been a great player for us for 4 years. He's a really solid two-way player. He plays in every situation for us. I think he's got to be a candidate for the Sportsmanship Award. He doesn't have a penalty yet this season, playing all those minutes and leading us in scoring. So you can't lead a team in scoring if you don't go to the hard areas and play the game the right way. He does that, and he does it without taking penalties. And Carter's just had a breakout year. Last year it was unfortunate. He had an injury. He had an ankle injury, actually a fracture that was a slight fracture that you could play through, but it clearly affected him. And with him being healthy this year, he's had a breakout year. And Sasha's always been able to score, Pyasov. And now, he got hot last weekend. He had 4 last weekend. So we need all 4 of our lines going. And it's nice, though, when you have a senior-led line who's scoring a lot of points for you.
You just mentioned Alexander Pyasov, and 12 goals as a sophomore, 16 as a junior. And then this season, 10 games ago, he only had 3. He's now scored 8 goals in the last 10 games. Obviously, when you're a goal scorer, the puck needs to go the right direction, but the puck has to find you, and you have to find where the puck is. How much has his game really just changed a little bit in the last 10?
I think he's been great since the second half of the season. I think the first half of the season, sometimes, as you just alluded to it, as a goal scorer, you go through streaks sometimes where the puck doesn't go in for you. I remember in 2001, probably the best goal scorer that I ever coached, Brian Giunta, he had 30 goals a year. But throughout the entire NCAA playoffs, he didn't score a goal. But he still affected the game. That was his greatest strength. It didn't matter whether he was scoring or not. And I think Sasha realized, hey, I'm just going to play great hockey and affect the game in other ways. And if the puck goes in, it goes in. And sure enough, when you start playing that way, it turns for you when you're a goal scorer.
The last line of defense for you, your goaltender, somebody who's been there for a couple of years now, Tomas Pamakska. His numbers are decent at 3.17 goals against, an .898 save percentage. But then again, going over the last 10 games, it's a stark contrast: a 2.49 goals against and a .920 save percentage. Obviously, when a team's playing well, things go well on every end. What do you like about the way he's played down the stretch?
I think he's really he came back from break with a really bad case of the flu. So, he tried to gut it out and play up in Hanover, but it was probably not a good decision by all of us because I think that set him back for another couple of weeks. But since he's gotten healthy, he's got a tireless work ethic. I think he's done a really nice job of addressing some of the issues he had in the first half. And you've seen that with goalies too. Sometimes it's just a change of your glove position or a change of, being maybe a little bit more aggressive. And he's been able to work on those things. And I think we've played better defense in front of him as well. I think we've done a better job of limiting teams' grade A scoring chances. And that coupled with him working on his game has improved his numbers.
We're talking with Mike Cavanaugh, head coach at UConn. As we're talking about your players, it's hard not to notice that you are recruiting people from all over the place. Some schools tend to focus in on one area or have most of their players come from one place. But I see tri-state area kids and New England and USHL, NAHL, prep school, Western Canada, BCHL kids, Minnesota, kids from Europe. How do you go about recruiting from such a far-flung area? And is that wide net part of your strategy in finding players?
Yeah, well, we've always wanted to be able to recruit the local kid. I think there's great local players, within a 60-mile radius of our school, or even say 90-mile radius of our school, going down in the Westchester, New York area, New Jersey. And that's something that we've always wanted to do, keep those players here. We don't want a player to be able to drive by UConn and go to another hockey school. So that's been a priority. We've had some success out in Western Canada. We've got some pretty good players out in Western Canada. And, a lot of the European players, they all played in the USHL. So it's not like we're going over and scouring the rinks in Moscow and the Czech Republic to find players. It's, Jakob and Tomas and Jan and Vlad, they all played in the USHL. Ruslan was really the only one. We saw him play in an international tournament over here in Canada. That was where we saw him play. But, it's just, I think diversity is good. I think it's really good to have on your team. I don't think it's healthy to have a bunch of players from one area. So it's, I guess it's just happened organically. It hasn't really been a set recruiting model that we're sticking to, have when we're putting this team together.
Well, that brings to mind the 40th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice, and it's depicted also in the movie how you had New England kids and Minnesota kids who kind of clashed a little bit in culture. Do these players, as you bring them together, have they clicked right away, or have they had to kind of get to know each other?
It doesn't click right away, but, one of the things our athletic director, David Benedict, put together this diversity forum last spring, and I went to it. And then one of the ideas, they said, if you have players from different nationalities on your team, have you ever thought about having a dinner from their home country for the entire team? And it kind of what I thought was a really good idea. So it's one thing we've done this year. We've had, a Russian-themed dinner where the whole team has to go and kind of eat Russian food. We've had a Czech dinner. We've had a Canadian-themed dinner. And I think it brings the guys together. Certainly the guys, the Russians were really proud of the borscht at the meal we had that night. And I think it gives our guys a different perspective of what it's like in their country. It's been something that has brought our team. It's been one thing, now playing well and winning games is the ultimate thing that brings your team together. But that's certainly been something that I think has helped off the ice.
You've been around Hockey East first as an assistant for quite some time and now as a head coach, so probably about 25 seasons. Have you ever seen Hockey East race and maybe Hockey East competitiveness this tight in your time around the league?
That's a good question. Someone was asking me that, and the only time I can remember, and Jim, maybe you can, I thought there was one year where Vermont might have been the 8th or 9th team. I don't know if they made the playoffs, but they went to the national tournament.
You're absolutely correct. It was 2009, 2010. Yep.
So I know it was super competitive that year, but to answer your question, no. I mean, last week going into the weekend, we're 4 points out of first and we're 1 point out of ninth. I mean, when you have 5 points that separate your first place team and your ninth place team that's going to miss the playoffs with 5 games left, essentially we all have 5 games left in the season. That's remarkable.
More with UConn head coach Mike Cavanaugh in a moment. First, this word from our sponsor, the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online.
Every time you show up, every time you make your presence heard, whether you clap your hands or stomp your feet, lead the chant or join the chorus. However you choose to be a fan, you make the game. The NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 to get your tickets today.
Continuing now with Mike Cavanaugh on USCHO Spotlight. We had a chance last week to talk to the new incoming commissioner of Hockey East, Steve Metcalf, and a couple of things that he talked about that the league is going to have to look at is balanced versus unbalanced schedule, and I guess that means playing either 20 league games, which may be too few, and 30, which may be too many, and also what the league's position is going to be on overtime rules, especially if there is something put through with this being a rules year and put through nationally. I'd like to start with the second one first. Your thoughts on going to 3-on-3 overtime after 5-on-5 or some other formula for overtime going forward?
If you want to go to 3-on-3 overtime after 5-on-5, I'm fine with that. I think that you have to play 5-on-5 overtime. I think it's a different style of hockey. Listen, we've played in two of them this past 2 weekends, and we lost one and we won one. And I think you have to get used to playing in sudden death. I'd hate for me to have to go into the Hockey East tournament or the national tournament, and the first time that we're playing 5-on-5 sudden death overtime is in the national tournament. I think it's a skill to learn how to play in that 5-on-5 sudden death overtime. That being said, I'm not opposed to going to 3-on-3, but it's got to count for something in the pairwise. I'm not just going to play it so the fans can have a winner at the end of the day. Like, if you're going to risk one of your players getting hurt in a 3-on-3 overtime, then it's got to be for something. So whether it's 60-40 or 55-45, it's got to be played for something. It just can't be both teams get a tie and we're just going to play this so the fans can have a winner at the end of the day. I'm one of the few who believe I'm fine with the way things are now. There's only 10% of the games, I think, that end in a tie. Like, if you look at it over the course of time, it's 10, maybe on a high year, it's 12% that actually end in a tie. Like, why are we trying to change rules where 88% of the time or 90% of the time that there's a winner? So that's how I feel about it. I'm okay with the way it is now. But if they want to change, I think I'd like to stay with the 5-on-5 for 5 minutes and then 3-on-3 for 5 minutes.
Some people have also brought up that the shootout has become maybe even anticlimactic. There have been some that have gone 10 or 11 rounds, and people don't have that patience and head home. Any thought on the shootout part of it?
I don't like the shootout. I think it's to decide a game. Again, I think fans are okay with a tie. I've never heard the fans get really upset after a game. If it's been a great hockey game and it's been up and down, they're never upset with a tie. It's just, hey, this was a great hockey game and it is what it is. And like I said, 90% of the time there's a winner or a loser. So I don't think it's a major problem in our game.
I mentioned also about balanced and unbalanced schedule, and that even brings into line the playoff rules as well that need to be talked about. Hockey East did go with all 11 and then switched back to just taking the top 8. And then there are also questions about playing a balanced versus unbalanced schedule. Any opinions on where the league should go on either of those?
Well, my first opinion is we have to have at least 10 non-league games. If you've looked over the course of the history of Hockey East, and as you said, over the 25 years that I've been in the league, when we've put the most teams in the tournament, it's been the years we've played the most non-league games. And there's no greater example of that than Arizona State. They play 34 non-league games. They're not tied to anybody in their league. So if you look at how important non-league games are, just look at Arizona State. They might get in again this year. And I think it would be totally different if they were tied to a league. So that coupled with the fact that when we've put 5, 4 teams in, it's usually when we're playing 10, or at one point we're playing 12, sometimes 14 non-league games in this league. That being said, if we want to stay at, if we're going to play an unbalanced schedule, then I think everybody has to be in the tournament. I was in favor of 8 because I thought that the regular season should count for something. But if it's going to be an unbalanced, it's really not fair that you see how tight the league is this year. And if you're that 9th place team and you had to play your extra games against the top 4 teams in the league, 8th place team played their top 4 against the bottom 4 teams in the league, that's not fair. So if you're going to stay unbalanced, then I think we've got to go back to 11 teams in the tournament. If you want to balance it, I'm fine with keeping it at 8. So that's my thoughts on that.
We're talking with UConn head coach Mike Cavanaugh. And Mike, we let off talking about how hot this team is right now. How much does confidence play into that in college athletics? I guess even at the pro level, confidence means something. But when you're only playing 34 games, teams can get on a run just because they're believing in themselves. I
think that's true in life, Jim. When things are going well for you in life, you believe in what you're doing. And it's a funny thing because it's not like a pill you can take that says, I'm going to give you confidence. A lot of times it's just hard work and habits. And if you're working hard and your habits are good and you're continually sticking with your habits, even through the tough times, it will turn for you. And it's hard. It's a hard thing to do because self-doubt always creeps in all our lives at different points. And it's really staying true to those habits that that make you successful. And we're fortunate where we have some incredible leadership. Wyatt Newpower and Ben Freeman, coupled with Sasha Pius and Adam Karashek's another captain, but even Justin Howell this year, who's had a great year for us as a senior. They've done an incredible job of instilling that hard work and those habits, those good habits, with all our players, especially our younger players, because the majority of our team are freshmen and sophomores.
Obviously, success is a good reason for people to come out to games. But I look at your attendance this year, just outside the top 20. I think you're 7 fans on average outside the top 20 in the nation. And I look at some of the schools that are below you and have beautiful facilities on their campus. Your facility is in downtown Hartford. You have to run buses for the students. It's not the easiest logistical thing to do, but you're still putting great crowds in at the XL Center in downtown Hartford. That's something that I think as a program you have to take a lot of pride in.
Oh, we do for sure. And I think one of the things that I think college hockey in general, we've got to figure, I don't know the answer to this, but maybe we start too early. I find, and Jim, I don't know about you when you're at different rinks, but in October and during college football season, it's really hard for us to draw fans. You're getting a lot of diehard fans, but since January, we've had crowds of 8,000, 6,000, well over 5,000. Those are great crowds for college hockey games, especially in our league. And the biggest challenge for us is just finding ways to get people to come to games in October and November. And I just don't think that's endemic to us. I think that's a college hockey problem.
I think I agree with you 100% there. And I'm going to leave you with one last one. It's probably the biggest question. You have the University of Massachusetts, a team that has had a very good season. They're on the schedule next, a Friday-Saturday series beginning down in Hartford. You've seen them on tape. What are your thoughts of this UMass team?
Extremely impressed with them. I think first and foremost, you have to start with, the double-edged sword of Murray and Lindbergh in goal. They've really posted some impressive numbers. Both of their goals against are under 2, so they play a great. And the thing about UMass is, it's not like they're playing a trapping defensive zone system. Their defensemen are as aggressive as anybody in the league. They play a great team system. Greg's done a phenomenal job there. They lose a player like Cale Makar or even Mario Ferraro, who was an outstanding player in our league. And, Zach Jones comes in and Matt Kessel comes in, and it's like they haven't missed a beat on defense. So they're really strong from the goal out to the defensemen. And then up front, John Leonard's the most prolific scorer in all of college hockey this year. I think he's got the most goals, 24 goals. And, Chafee, I know when healthy, he's as good a goal scorer as Leonard. So they pose a lot of problems as far as being so well balanced from their goal to their defense to their forwards that, we're going to have to play extremely well. We're going to have to do the same things I'm sure they're trying to do. We're going to have to manage the puck in the neutral zone. We're going to have to get pucks to the net. We're going to have to, clear out in front of our net. I think every team going into the game has a game plan that's probably very similar to the opposing team. It's just, what team's going to execute best.
Well, your team has been executing well of late, 7-1 in your last 8 Hockey East games, 3 left for you on the slate. Mike Cavanaugh, we always appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us today, and good luck down the stretch here and into the playoffs.
Hey, Jim, Ed, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate all you guys do for college hockey, and keep up the good work.
That's UConn's Mike Cavanaugh. Jim, one of the things I like about talking with Mike Cavanaugh is how frank he is and how well thought out he is on some of these issues. In fact, I said to him after we got done recording how impressed I was with his insights on 5-on-5 overtime. Really, it's a different situation than playing 5-on-5 during a game because you can't be sitting back. You've got to be aggressive, and there's a tension in sudden death. That's not something anybody's brought up. That's a really good point and a really good reason for sticking with 5-on-5 during the regular season, because you're going to have to play it come playoff time.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I had never really given a lot of thought to that. I was always looking the other way. Boy, if you're going to talk about the NHL, you need that 3-on-3 skill because even going to the AHL, any level up, they play 3-on-3 overtime. And I hadn't really thought about the fact that your players, especially college players, may not be accustomed to playing that 5-on-5 with the knowledge that one puck slips past you and the game's over. You do that in the NCAA tournament, one puck slips past you and your season's over. And if you're a senior, your career's over. So it does matter. And that's really good insight that he gave.
The other thing that I thought was pretty interesting was talking about schedule balanced versus unbalanced. He made the point that Hockey East has been most successful when the league has had at least 10 non-league games. If they went to a balanced schedule with the 11 teams in conference right now, that would mean 20 regular season games, 14 non-league games that they'd have to pick up. But given schedules around college hockey, I don't think that would be that much of an impediment.
I don't know. When Notre Dame was in the league, and even before UConn joined the league, and it was Notre Dame was the 11th team. They actually tried the 20-game schedule, and at that point, there were certain teams in the league. I know Vermont struggled with it, New Hampshire struggled with it, Maine struggled with it. They weren't able to fill their non-league slate, so they ended up playing each other a number of times just to make sure that they got enough non-conference games. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. It was at that time that I remember Jerry York, the longtime Boston College coach, saying, if you're these teams, you need to challenge yourself. Go find teams that you would never play. Maybe it's a rare Atlantic hockey team that you've never put on your schedule. Maybe it's Alabama Huntsville, whatever it might be. And I understand budgets kind of get in the way and sort of things, but it is good. The Arizona State example is excellent. You're not as reliant on the strength of your league if you're playing more non-league games. If you're only playing, say 4 or 7 non-conference games, you really do rely on the strength of your league to carry those teams into the tournament, especially the kind of the fringe teams, the bubble teams, and that becomes a big issue.
And that has been one of the things that has been brought up about the 7 teams leaving the WCHA. One of the thoughts is they've been dragged down by the Alaska schools in Huntsville. I think that's maybe a borderline argument, but it's obvious that everybody looks at the pairwise when they're making these kind of decisions.
That's very true, and I think that's always going to be the way decisions are made. Everybody thinks about the national tournament first. One
last thing, home ice for UConn in the Hockey East tournament is not out of the way. It's an uphill climb for them, though, a tough battle. 2 games against UMass and then wrapping the season against UMass Lowell.
And it looks like that game for Lowell could be the game that maybe decides which of those 2 teams gets home ice.
It's great to see a playoff race come down to the wire, and we'll be watching that in Hockey East over these last 2 weekends. That's it for USCHO Spotlight. We've been sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.